Welcome back to the champion show for consumers in South Africa. Ever wondered if the inclusive online adverts that fill your social media walls and online searches are actually truthful? We spoke to the Advertising Standard Authority of South Africa to find out more.
Whilst traditional fraud trends continue to be monitored, a number of technological developments have been introduced as non-traditional risks that may need a fresh approach to fraud management. Online retail in South Africa continues to grow at a high rate, having maintained a growth rate of above 20% since the turn of the century. In 2015, the rate of growth was 26%, taking online retail to the 7.5 billion rand mark. While the rate is expected to fall a little in 2016 to 20%, growth in rand terms is expected to remain the same as in 2015, taking the total to above 9 billion rand. We spoke to the head of Legal and Regulatory Affairs, Mr. Fred Makgato, of the Advertising Standards Authority of South Africa, who elaborated.
The Advertising Standards Authority of South Africa's mandate is to regulate advertising, whereby we adjudicate on advertising complaints. 2 is to lobby government on regulatory issues that affect our industry. So we receive complaints from the public. We assess whether are the complaints valid or not. But in terms of the Consumer Protection Act, there are penalties like fines up to 10% of the annual turnover or up to R1 million. But as the SA, we enforce the code.
This growing market has caught the eyes of many bogus online shops that advertise merchandise that they don't necessarily have means of producing. It is for this reason that advertisements are regulated within the South African industries.
In South Africa, I cannot say that there's the guidelines or the law that says if you buy online, these are the procedures that you've got to follow. Bear in mind that online buying is an international trend. So, and as you know, consumerism is now global. We buy from anywhere. So buying online is an individual decision.
The disadvantages of shopping online outweigh the benefits in some cases, as these scammers take advantage of the jurisdictions and laws of certain countries. Sadly, they get away with these crimes.
Buying online is a personal risk because you see an image on your screen and you are interested, but you don't have the opportunity to inspect the product itself. It's unlike going into a store, you see it, you touch it, you feel it, you are happy with the texture and the quality, or you can even ask a salesperson as to where this product comes from, what's the material. You just see an image on TV or on your screen, and whatever comes from the supplier, it then hits you when it arrives that in fact this is not the quality of the product that I've ordered.
Do you know what legal avenues you can explore in an event of an illicit surge into your personal information online? Well, take a look at this.
According to a presentation made at the 2015 Security Summit, South Africa has the third highest number of cybercrime victims worldwide. In fact, it was revealed that during a 6-week period leading up to the summit, South Africa suffered more cybercrime attacks than any other country in Africa. We recently attended the Lex Informatica Cyber Law Workshop, where we caught up with Mr. Sizwe Snail Kamtuze, the Director of Snail Attorneys, who spoke to us about South Africa's law capabilities of handling cybercrimes. The country continues to lose millions of rands annually. Of these cases, the majority involve unlawful electronic fund transfers, fraud, etc., where the password of the complainant was obtained or cloned cards were being used. The conviction rate for those found guilty currently stand on average of 89%.
Cybercriminality is a phenomenon that's been really taking place a lot in South Africa, not just in recent years, but for the last decade or so. So it is a rather rampant and reoccurring offense in South Africa. We do have the Electronic Communications Transactions Act, in particular sections 86(1), 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and 6, which deal with cyber criminal provisions, in other words, substantive cybercrime criminal provisions. So those particular provisions stipulate the crime of hacking, the crime of unlawful access, the crime of unlawfully modifying or designing something.
There has, however, been a new development to deal with the shift of today's threats in the digital environment.
We do have the South African Cyber Security Policy, or the framework, that intends to strengthen our cyber security capabilities vis-a-vis the ability to deal with a cyber security attack, the ability to prevent certain cyber security attacks, in other words, further attacks.
Many of these crimes are to solicit you of your hard-earned cash while making transactions online. We had the pleasure of speaking to South African Banking Risk Information Center, who shared with us their work in this prying trend. Susan, welcome to ANN7 Right Here on Consumer Guard. Tell me, how common is banking fraud and information theft in South Africa?
It remains a challenge, and I think we must expect that because the banking system is where the money is, and organized criminals are targeting money. So it's always a high priority.
And how do these types of crimes impact on one, or rather on consumers?
The feeling of being compromised at a personal level if your your information has been stolen and it's in the hands of people who shouldn't have it. So there's different levels of impact, but I think the personal impact is the one that's probably the most traumatic for the for the consumers themselves.
Susan, does the advent of technologies banking make it easier for these kind of thefts maybe to happen?
Business evolves and criminals then follow, and their modus operandi then sort of catches up with the technological wave. But what we are finding is that criminals are using technology, and that is quite scary because all of these inventions and all of this innovation is to make life easier and very often to make products more consumer friendly. But unfortunately the same technology is then abused by criminals.
And how can consumers, protect themselves against such?
Right. I think it's very, very important to understand that your phone, for example, is not just an instrument to talk on. It's not just a communication instrument. If you're using your phone for banking, then you need to familiarize yourself with the inherent risks of using your phone as an access method to do your banking.
Can the bank play a role in detecting and maybe preventing irregular activities, that could compromise the consumer in any other way?
Most banks who render digital banking services in fact do live monitoring of transactions as well. So I think many of the viewers will be able to attest to the fact that they've received a call from their bank where the bank says, Mrs. So-and-so, are you in Vietnam at the moment? And then the person says, gosh, no, I'm at home. And that is because the bank saw a transaction happening in a different jurisdiction and actually detected it and then contacted the consumer. So banks do play that role. And then, of course, there's always consumer education. And I'd really, really like to urge the viewers to keep a tab on what's happening out there. Read the tips that your banks give you. Go to the SABRIC website and educate yourself, because that little bit of knowledge, even if it's a little bit, can go a long way in keeping you safe.
What is the most common mistake that people make that many compromise their safety on, you know, especially on personal information?
People are too trusting.
Yes.
So what happens is you get a call, the person on the other end of the phone purports to be from your bank. Immediately when you think you're speaking to your bank, you sort of feel safe and comfortable. Please, please be very careful, because that is a trick that organized criminals are using daily. So they pretend to be from your bank and they contact you and they ask you all kinds of things that your bank wouldn't ask you. A bank will never ask you to disclose your PIN number on the phone or your password on the phone, so please, please don't fall into the trap.
Who are mostly common, you know, to these types of attacks?
We are all equally vulnerable. So what we're finding is that South African-based organized criminals sort of use the vishing, what I described just now, the call to you asking you for information. The term for that is vishing, and the theft of information where the consumer is tricked into disclosing information themselves is happening a lot, and the local organized criminals are sort of using those methods to target South African citizens. But then you have the transnational organized criminals, and they abusing technology, and their attack might be a little bit more technology based, but we're all equally vulnerable.
And just one more question, just quickly before we let you go. Can you please share with us, you know, just the preventative measures and detection techniques that could maybe reduce such attacks or magnitude of, you know, to lose at such a result?
Right. Very, very important to make sure that the technology that you use to access your banking account is safe and secure. Don't use an internet cafe to do banking, because you don't know what the level of security is on those computers. So make sure that if you use a computer or a mobile phone, that it has security on it, good security software, and also keep it updated. No good buying a package and then as soon as it starts eating into your data, you actually switch the updates off, because then you're not secure anymore. So that's an important thing. Also, bank responsibly. Don't click on links and emails, and disclose your personal information and so forth. I'd like to just touch on the ATM space, because that's an area that we find is being abused by criminals quite extensively. If you are using the ATM and somebody tries to help you, please do not accept that assistance. If you think your card's been jammed, or if your card is jammed and you're at the ATM rather, cancel your card. Don't leave the ATM to go and cancel your card. Stand there.
Time for us to wrap this up and of course share with you our infamous tip of the week.
Online shopping is not a foreign concept to the country. The fact that there are chancers and fraudsters committing cybercrime should push the authorities to stem out laws that protect the consumer and make scammers think twice before committing crime. Those that also sell goods via social media should ensure that they are honest with their dealings so as to not spoil it for genuine businesses that are legit. Goods sold should be made as advertised. Now let's take a look at your tip of the week.
Be wary of something that is too good to be true. If it's an extraordinarily good price, that's, 20% cheaper than the average, you have to see a red flag go up. Why is it so cheap?
That's all we have for you today. Thanks for tuning in. Bagaitsu, I'm Palesa Muchiminyani. Join us again next week as we take a look at how expensive a basket of basic food is. You can also get in touch with us should you have any consumer issue. Simply log on to nn7.com and click on the Consumer Guide link. Salang Sinki.